My name is Mikayla Taylor. This is my midterm submission for Chapter 12 of Cultural Diversity and Education. This chapter discusses teaching students with language and cultural differences. It provided insight and guidance to educators who do not exclusively teach and or provide students with English as second language instruction, but are still passionate about providing students from other cultures and backgrounds with the same educational opportunities as their peers. The chapter was centered around four main themes: the demographic and linguistic context for teaching in the United States, the nation's policy of providing equal educational opportunities, methods of teaching students who have standard English as their secondary language, and providing multiple perspectives of teaching students about differing cultures. The first section of Chapter 12 discusses immigration and demographic shifts. The first people in the United States were not white Europeans, but Native Americans who had created their own forms of government and naturally diverse cultures. After Europeans made their way to the United States, they forcibly brought African American enslaved people to North America. This section also discusses the rapidly growing ethnic and racial composition. Some states, such as Hawaii, California, New Mexico, and Texas, have a higher population of people of color than white people. The section makes sure to differentiate three terms that have been coined to describe individuals whose first language is not English, which includes English language learners and limited English proficiency. All remaining students that attend school are part of the third category. The first two terms are typically used interchangeably, and for the duration of the rest of the paper, English language learners, or ELL, will be referred to both groups. ELLs typically speak little to no English or speak more than one non-English language compared to limited English proficiency, and the end of the chapter discusses instruction for ELL students with more in-depth descriptions. The second section of the chapter talks about policy of equal educational opportunities. All students, regardless of background or culture, are entitled to fair education. This does not mean that all students will receive the same materials, but instead are provided with resources and programs that will help them succeed. This includes students who speak non-English languages entirely, or students with dialects that differ from standard English, such as African American Vernacular English, or AAVE, or other regional dialects. The section uses an example of a student that uses the word ain't to vocalize that they are not going on a field trip. In the example, the teacher corrects them and says, "You are not going." This can be detrimental to some students in an English class when writing an essay or answering questions. It opens a space for frustration or distaste for school, specifically in a classroom where writing is critical. This section also discusses different registers for students, which includes home talk, friend talk, and school talk. The first two registers are where students are more comfortable talking with others around them in a low-stakes setting. They can use whatever grammar and vocabulary they have deemed appropriate in those settings. School talk, however, has its own more professional expectation that students are expected to follow. In many cases, it is the teacher's responsibility to assist students in speaking standard English, but not discourage students from their linguistic interests by pushing American English onto the child. The section differentiates the importance of ensuring that children do not stay within the confines of home and friend talk, but do not discourage students' linguistic interests by only pushing standard English, as having experience with communications in different settings is beneficial and empowering for children. The third section of the chapter discusses the best practices for equal opportunity classes. This includes scaffolding, reflection, engagement, and cooperation. Equal opportunity involves providing students with many learning opportunities, but does not include making materials easier. Students are a wealth of prior knowledge from life experiences. Good practices include asking students what they already know about the topic, where they've learned or heard about the topic, and asking them questions to make connections between new and existing knowledge. This also includes being able to consider a broad range of ideas that could come from different cultures. Exploration of content promoted engagement can go a long way in promoting student interest of topic. If students are always being fed information, their engagement will become static. Engagement and cooperation go hand in hand. Students need to be given opportunities to teach and learn from their peers just as much as they learn from their teacher. There are many strategies for teaching children with different backgrounds, but there is also an abundance of way to engage students in the learning process and take ownership of their own learning. The last section of this chapter discusses the importance of having multiple perspectives of teaching about culture. This can appear in many ways, such as including students as experts of topics that are being covered in school, bringing in parents and people from the community to discuss the different ways that they use knowledge, specifically from a topic that is being covered in class, in their work or daily lives. This can include reading books that are mirrors of one's own experiences or sliding glass doors that provide perspectives of someone else's real-world experiences. The last section also discusses how educators should select their resources, which includes the purpose for selecting them, why the materials were developed, the qualifications of the author of the materials being used, and what source or credibility does the author have when creating the materials. Other things to consider when selecting materials for instruction include thinking about who is being represented and how. Is the person of color making less money than the presumed white counterpart in a word problem? What kind of jobs are assigned to people? Are they stereotypical? Are there only straight individuals in the material we select, or is the LGBTQ plus community also being represented? I'm currently teaching my internship at a school with many students who are English language learners. I have one class where over half the students do not speak English as their first language, but who also do not share a language with other students in the class. The book suggests placing students with peers who share a language, but that isn't feasible in my classroom. Instead, I must utilize different instructional techniques to help students gain confidence in their public speaking, communication, and collaboration skills. Due to this, I have adopted a collaborative classroom where students are placed in groups, where each has access to the whiteboard. The idea behind this is similar to having coffee in a cafe with your friends and solving math problems. There's a lot of group collaboration time built into the schedule so that I can look around the room and monitor misconceptions in real time. And we can take time to regroup and reteach if needed. I also try to change their seating frequently so that students gain confidence in speaking and collaborating with other people. There are many cultures in which collaboration is welcomed, but it seems all too often that the American school system values independent learning. This doesn't make sense when you consider the workforce and the skills people need to utilize once outside of the classroom. Because of this, the collaboration aspect of my classroom is building more than just mathematical knowledge, but also building the previously mentioned soft skills that are needed every day in the real world. Many of the interactions that I have with my students are centered around making them experts of the topics that we cover in class. I try to create a learning environment in which students are discovering math on their own. This comes with a little necessary assistance from me. My students are used to a culture of modern classroom where all the work is done on devices, or an I do, we do, you do learning style. But that style of teaching isn't allowing students to make connections and conclusions on their own. Instead, it's an environment that encourages information regurgitation that is stored temporarily but then shortly forgotten until the next time the topic is brought up. One of the great things about collaboration and self-discovery in the classroom is that it allows students to take ownership of their learning and be experts in their own fields and teach their peers. Despite my students having vastly different cultural backgrounds, they're able to use their previous experiences to teach their classmates in a way that I have never thought of. One of the great things about leaning on students' prior knowledge is having the opportunity to assign competence to students who aren't what their peers deem as smart. This not only assigns competence, but builds on mathematical confidence. Of course, the classroom routine didn't come naturally. It took a lot of practice and encouragement for students to become comfortable talking with one another. I teach middle schoolers who are afraid of making mistakes in front of anyone, out of fear of judgment. It took a long time to get rid of snickers across the room if the socially deemed dumb kid didn't get the correct answer to a problem. But I've implemented call-in responses so that students become more conscious about how they perceive themselves and others around them. The first we worked on was mistakes allow thinking to happen, which the acronym for that is math. This not only serves as a call back to attention at the front of the room, but also serves as a reminder that it's okay to make mistakes because that's how we learn. Our second call and response comes from me hearing, "I can't do this," and "it's too hard," almost every day during our multi-step equation unit. It began as I can do math, but has evolved to we can do math. This has helped promote positive mindset shift in my classroom from the content being too difficult and create a better learning and teaching environment. I still have a student who will occasionally state, I'm dumb, when they make a calculation error or don't remember how to continue the math problem, but we still work around that. The incorporation of manipulatives has transformed abstract concepts into something tangible for students to feel and look at to unlock deeper understanding of different concepts. Various equations, geometric shapes, and algebraic expressions leave the theoretical concepts from workbooks and become real-world applications. Recently, we introduced utilizing Pythagorean theorem in 3 dimensions. Since the tables in my classroom have little totes that hold various items that we use every day, we were able to make triangles for the base of the cubes using the side measurements, along with a triangle that fits diagonally in the cube, all with Pythagorean theorem. We identified which measurements we needed to use first and wrote equations for triangles, but one of the beautiful things about manipulatives is that it demystifies certain complex concepts, but also has been shown to be beneficial for students with different learning styles. They have surprised me many times with their different use of tables, graphs, charts, arrow diagrams when learning about slope, placing circles, triangles, and squares around like terms when learning about multi-step equations, and now dissecting cubes, cones, and pyramids with Pythagorean theorem. Not only do manipulatives have great benefits, but they also promote collaboration, which, as I mentioned previously, is the center of my classroom philosophy. There's a lot of conversation happening in the classroom, most of which is math, but it's inevitable for some of the conversations to not be math-centered, which I don't mind because they are developing those conversational skills. I still have a lot to learn about various cultures, but I'm still learning more about the way other cultures utilize math and how I can incorporate these methods into my math classroom. There is much to be valued in a diverse community by allowing students to be given the space to strategic integration of manipulatives, it creates a space where math concepts are not only understood but embraced as well. This in turn results in a strong foundation for mathematical and critical thinking, and students can carry with them through the rest of their lives.